And now back to the HR Network. Our next event is on March 22nd. It's the changing healthcare landscape for employers, and I want to tell you the panel is just as terrific as today's panel. It's just great. There's a healthcare surprise a day. Things are happening, finding loopholes. You know, as Nancy Pelosi said, you'll know what's in the law after we pass the law. And so now we're finding out. We're just finding out. And things keep changing. We keep getting notices. You keep getting notices that this has changed and this has changed. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we'll send out that invitation in about a week. Thank you for coming, and thank you for allowing us to be part of your professional lives. On with the main event. Take 2 minutes, please, to turn off your cell phones, as they always say. For the next 45 minutes, please do not text. You can't imagine how annoying it is when we see people texting. Be considerate of your speakers. Leave after the Q&A. We will end promptly at 9:28. 9:28. You will be out of here. Today's topic is a special post-election heads-up about where things are heading and what you should be doing. We are very lucky to have these panelists, and look at these handouts. I mean, really, it's just great. I am sorry to announce that Charlie Busatil, he's an old friend of ours, head of Human Resources for White and Case. He's very, very ill, and so last night he finally gave in and just said he really just could not come today. But Charlie was going to talk about healthcare, but that's okay. You'll get to hear about healthcare in March. He just says you take that onion, you keep peeling it back, and every time you peel it back, you cry a little more. You peel it back, you cry a little more. So anyway, you can take a look at his handout. But our first panelist today is Pierre Bonnefil. He's a partner and immigration expert, and gosh, what's happening there with EpsteinBeckerGreen, and we've had panelists from EBG a lot. Immigration's a big hot item, and it's going to get bigger and hotter. So Pierre will tell us what's happening there. And then Leslie Silverman is a prosecutor partner in D.C., worked until 11 o'clock last night. Here she is. And she knows what's happening on the Hill. And so she's going to tell you about what she hears on the Hill, especially from the EEO area. And remember, you're part of the panel, too. We want to hear what's going on in your organization. Please get ready to ask those questions. You have a notepad. Take notes. You have a notepad there, and it's right behind the directory. Okay, take it away, Pierre. Yay. Let's do the applause.
Good morning, all. Can everybody hear me? I was told to eat the microphone, so I'm going to try not to because that would be pretty rude. But anyway, my name is Pierre Bonnefil. I'm a member of the Immigration Law Group at EpsteinBeckerGreen here in New York. And I've been practicing immigration law for approximately 20 odd years. When I first started practicing the immigration law, it was just something when I used to almost be embarrassed when I went to parties and all, and what are you doing? And I was like, I do immigration law. And there, everybody was looking at me like, what does that mean? And the immigration lawyer of old is just somebody who used to just fill out forms, basically assist the families or the companies with just cookie cutter applications, and those days are gone. The immigration lawyer now has become more prominent, which is great. He has become more of a member of a team, and we work a lot with you all, with the HR departments. And what we try to do is we try to really be of assistance to the HR group in order to assist them with compliance, with immigration, with both the immigration laws, the Department of Labor laws that are changing, as we know, on a day-to-day basis. Also, what we try to do, too, is we help them with the Department of State, also, because you have a lot of folks coming from overseas. What we do, too, is we also try to manage expectations, and that has become our biggest issue, because nowadays what you see is a lot of investment in the U.S. We're seeing a lot of new companies coming in from Asia, from Europe. As they say, the U.S. is for sale. As we've seen, there's a lot of companies that are acquiring other companies, and it's just a really interesting time for us. And what we see more and more is that when you have individuals who are coming in from different parts of the world, and they come in and they think that the U.S. is like their home country, which obviously we know it isn't. So they try to implement their procedures, and that's where we get involved to tell them you can't do that. the whole, just a very simple little example, in certain countries in Europe, as you know, you have the CV that they call our resume, their CV, and has a picture. It has their date of birth. It has their, it has a lot of things. Their status, their civil status, all these things that are that are no-nos in our practice. So you have to sort of, take these people in and say, excuse me, you can't really expect to do that. You can't do it the way you used to do it, you do at home. So the idea really is to try to be sort of a buffer, sort of in a partner that I said with the folks that we deal with, which are mostly the HR departments of different companies. So having said that, the role of the immigration attorney now has been increased. So obviously, I'm very happy about that, because now I'm proud to, when I go into parties and all that, and everybody's saying, "Do you have a card? Do you have a card? Do you have a card? Do you have a card?" So it's obviously it's just fantastic. So anyway, that's sort of my little intro. Now the whole topic of today is going to be, now we just had an election, as we know. We all suffered through that. I know it was a lot going on during November and much before then, obviously. And now we're back to some sort of civility. President Obama is going to be inaugurated on Sunday and again on Monday, and Martin Luther King Day, which I think is pretty cool. So the idea now is, what's the immigration landscape going to be like going forward? And this is what I'm going to try to give you my take on it. Unfortunately, the ink is not dry, as they say. There's a lot of, there are a lot of pundits out there who are saying this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And my feeling always is, until the law is signed and we know that it's going to be effective, then it's really just, that's what it is. It's really just what people think. But what we've seen in the past few years, basically since really, I would say 2006 till the present, has been an increase in what we call compliance enforcement. Okay, what we've seen is between I would say pre-2006, I would say, I'm sorry, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, would just focus really on the critical infrastructure. They really didn't focus on much else. They were just sort of doing their thing. They really didn't have much money. Then what happened was that a lot of money was thrown their way, and a very, very, very big effort was made to try to really go after employers, not so much on the civil side, but on the criminal side. Now, you've probably seen the cases where HR people have been, or presidents of companies have been found guilty of really harboring illegals and hiring illegal aliens. Or unlawful aliens, I should say. And what has happened, a lot of folks have gone to jail. A lot of their assets have been forfeited. A lot of their companies have been closed. A lot of people there have been tax implications, tax prosecutions. So, Immigration and Customs Enforcement is going out in full speed. There's tons of money that is being thrown out there, and they're just really going after employers. They made it very, very clear. Secretary Napolitano made it very, very clear that they're going after employers who are in violation of the immigration laws. It's very, very clear. And you can see that in the cases. You can see that just all you need to do is go onto the ICE website, which is ice.org, and it is just, you look at it, and they're just very proud. They have, today we did this. Today, this raid was done. This particular investigation took place. And they are like anybody else, like any other business. They're looking for publicity. So if they are going after the big tickets, as they say, but they're also going after the small tickets too. So just be forewarned that they're not going away. So what's happening with ICE is that with all of the fines that have been levied, all of the prosecutions, all the investigations that have been taking place, it's increased dramatically each year. 2012 was a banner year. 2013 promises to be another year of that sort. They're just going to continue going after employers who violate the immigration law. So what is violations? What are violations? What are things that people are looking at? We're really hiring, turning a blind eye or turning back on, you have a candidate that you really, really like. Maybe this individual is somebody that you really want to hire, but maybe they don't have the proper paperwork. Maybe I'll look the other way. Maybe I'll bring him in as an independent contract. That might work. Maybe I'll just bring him on, and then I won't have to do an I-9 form, and then he'll just be an independent contractor. But meanwhile, he's got a desk. He's got an email address. He's got a phone. He works next door to other people who do exactly the same thing. He is supervised by somebody within the department. Seems to me to be an employee, doesn't it? That's a problem. So what individuals are doing is, and what we have to do as immigration attorneys, is to go to that particular company and say, by the way, folks, you can't do that. You cannot, under any circumstances, treat this person. You can't call him an independent contractor and then treat him as an employee. That way you're going to get away from having to do an I-9, because you're knowingly violating the immigration law, which now not only imposes civil fines, but also, if it's a pattern, criminal violations and asset forfeitures, etc. So it's really a very, very slippery slope, and one really needs to be careful as to what one does. And I am often the bearer of bad news, saying to them, by the way, folks, guess what? This person has to be let go. I think one of the toughest things that I had to do, there was a small station, television station, that treated, I would say probably about maybe 60 to 70% of their employees as independent contractors. And guess what? They weren't. So, you know, I had to be the bearer of bad news and saying, you see this roster of people? All of these people have to go. Let's just say I wasn't the most popular. I thought there was probably going to be a hit after me or something. I was afraid I was But anyway, the idea is, what you're getting the point. The point is, you need to be careful. I'm not sure if you all know about the Walmart case that came down a few years ago. Huge, huge case. You probably all know about it. But that's sort of the case that we use as a landmark case to explain how, in essence, having people, and it was, I don't know if you, I'll just spend a second on it. In what it was, basically, there were in one of the Walmart stores, there was a cleaning staff that was there, and they were working around the clock at night. They were there cleaning, and they were actually, some of them were even staying, spending the night there and all that. And what the court said is, the employer should have known that these folks were unlawfully here in the U.S. and that they should have not had them on. So there are, the long arms are stretching out, even though they're not their employees. What they're saying is, be careful, because we're going to, impute the knowledge to you, and you should have done something about it. So it's really important to keep in mind that ICE is not going to stop only at the borders. They're going to go further. They're going to try to really go after people. So another thing that's a little different from the Bush years now with the Obama years is that all their investigations are done a little more, I would say, stealth-like. They're not, with the Bush era raids, they were just, in your face. The helicopters would come down, everybody with their ice jackets and, all this other fun stuff, and they would just circle you and just stop you from doing things. That's changed a little bit. It's still shock and awe. I hate that word, but anyway, a lot of that is still done. But it's a little more, sophisticated, let's just say, but it's still going on. And what they're doing is they're going after the pockets of the employers. And one of a story that I heard, and then I'll move on, was there was a company that really one day helicopters came in and they just circled. It was a company in the Southwest. They circled everybody. They circled the company. It was a production company, and basically they shut down the company. Nobody could enter, nobody could leave, nobody could move, and they ended up arresting people, and they arrested the president of the company, who ended up spending time in jail because he had a really bad pattern of just really looking the other way, as I said, and hiring people and keeping them aboard when he shouldn't have. And his answer was, I have a business to run. And I know that's what everybody has. The best and the brightest are hard to get, so I need to cut corners a little bit, so I'm going to hire those that I can. So just sort of the takeaway here is to know that when we're talking to employers, what we always tell them is, the first thing we say is to really just assess the legal exposure. What are your patterns? What are your activities leading to? Just figure out what it is that it means to you in terms of legal exposure. I mean, is it something that I'm doing that's so bad that it's going to cause me problems? Are they going to shut down my company? Am I going to be investigated, etc.? Very importantly, this is where we get involved, to educate the management team and to really let the management team know that, hey, you can't do this, you can do this, you might not want to do this, and you definitely shouldn't do this. To really work with them hand in hand to let them know what needs to be done and what should not be done. what's really, really important, I feel, is really to develop an internal policy. We talk about corporate immigration policy. We talk about I-9 policies. It's just really, really important to develop a very, very strong policy that should be followed by everybody in the company. So that's another thing that we get involved with. Also, what we do is we really talk to the HR departments about really just identifying fraud. Because a lot of times, and I don't know, you've probably all seen it when somebody shows up with a card, and this I can't believe people actually fell for it. Maybe just a green card, an alien registration card with a picture like Mickey Mouse or something on it, and it was taken in as a valid document, so the person was working, and things like that obviously are funny, and they shouldn't. It's maybe on the extreme, but people do that. You want to try to train the HR department is to recognizing what's a document that's accepted, what you can take, what you can't take. So therefore, at least you're consistent across the line. And then the last thing that we talk about is really the Form I-9. I know that the Form I-9 is something that you all know about, something that is quite simple and quite easy to complete, but we see so many employers who just look the other way and don't fill it out complete, or fill it out incorrectly, or do whatever they want to do, they do, and then obviously that is something that will trigger an investigation. That is something that's going to trigger an eventual raid or an eventual audit. So it's really important to really take that document seriously, because otherwise it's going to lead to something that you may not want to deal with. Okay. Now, what we've seen a lot also is just really the increase of discrimination cases that have been. My firm has a section that deals with labor and employment, and there's been an increase in discrimination claims by foreign nationals. They're saying, hey, I've been discriminated against and I was let go because I'm from China, I'm from India, I'm from the UK, I'm from wherever. So we are seeing more and more of that, and here it is again in the Form I-9 context, where you have individuals who are just who are asking for additional documents. In the Form I-9, are telling the individuals what documents to present, which you can't do. They're asking inappropriate questions, and it's just really they're taking the I-9 part of it and just really deciding prior to maybe having the person start working whether this is somebody that they want to work for the company or not. So you really need to be careful about that in terms of the Form I-9 completion. And what we've seen is, as I said, we've seen a spike in that. We've seen an increase in that. So that's something that's out there that I think is going to continue. All Department of Labor inquiries and USCIS investigations are based on complaints. So what will happen is you have a disgruntled employee. He or she will go and say, hey, listen, I was let go because I happen to be from this part of the world, or I was certain. They asked me, I presented 5 documents instead of 1. They told me what to present. They over documented the I-9, over papered it, and that's the reason I was let go. So, fair warning is there's been an increase in that, and I think it's going to continue to the point where I think it's going to just become, it's almost like a common occurrence. And how to avoid it is, again, as I was saying, is the training. To work with the HR departments to explain to them, hey, listen, you're going to be in charge of completing the Form I-9. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do. These are the permissible inquiries. This is what you should be aware of. So therefore, at least this way, you ensure the likelihood that you're not going to run into one of these issues, because that's the last thing that you would want to do. Okay. So, how am I doing with time? Okay. Terrific. Okay, great. Okay, 5 more minutes? Okay. All right, I'll jump over the 7. Oh, okay. All right. I just don't want to. I want everybody out of here at 9:28, as you promised. Well, just to let you know real quick, I'll just talk about it real quick. There's just keeping in mind that the fines. So when I was talking about I-9 violations, what's important to know is just that, like a failure to complete a Form I-9, the fines go from $110 to $1,100. Knowingly employing unauthorized workers goes from $375 to $3,200, and the second offense goes from $3,200 to $6,500, and the subsequent offenses go from $4,300 to $11,000, and this is per person. Not per, it's per person. So if you multiply that and you have multiple situations, then you're going to multiply that. And at the end of the day, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a huge violation in terms of, fines that you're going to have to pay. But it doesn't stop there. As I mentioned, they go after, they will look at whether there's a willful pattern in practice. And then what they'll do is they'll prosecute for violations of tax liabilities, asset forfeitures, and fines. So that's important to really just say, to try to stay away from that so this will not happen. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about very, very quickly, and then we'll leave the best part for last, is the E-Verify. I don't know how many of you are using E-Verify. Don't know. Some of you are. Well, yeah. It's not, as we know, it's not mandatory, except if you really are dealing with federal contracts. The funny part about E-Verify is in some states it's mandatory. Other states, they tell you not to use it. And the problem that we've been seeing, and Leslie and I were talking about it before, is the sheer problems, the mechanical problems. It's a database that's growing and a system that's growing, and it's really, for you who don't know, really, it's just really assists in identifying and just really, like, it's just the employment authorization of certain individuals. It just really gives you the sort of seal of approval. Using the Department of Homeland Security database and the Social Security database. And what happens here is, unfortunately, there are a lot of false positives, which lead to individuals who are citizens of the U.S., who were born here, who've never lived anywhere else, who for some reason, because of the misspelling of the name, because the Social Security number has been, turned around, or maybe some sort of, identity theft, all of a sudden they find themselves on the end of a denial where they're saying they're not authorized to work. Meanwhile, they were born here. So it's a system that is going to be here. It's going to be, it looks like it's going to, they're pushing towards making it mandatory across the U.S. for everybody. Don't know if that's going to happen or not, but it seems like, it didn't happen up to now. It started back in the 90s. Now, all this, to now it's still going on. And my feeling is that it's going to eventually become the law. So just stay tuned for that, because it's going to change. Let's just say it throws a number of monkey wrenches into what an HR professional does on a day-to-day basis. So it's just be forewarned that that's going to happen. So it's just really going forward. The last part that I don't know if you all saw the article that appeared in the New York Times on Sunday, where President Obama has mentioned a little before, but they were reporting on it, that there's going to be, that they're working on, let's just say, comprehensive immigration reform, which is something that is really, really, really needed. The immigration laws and regulations here have been, I don't know how many, the last time there was any sort of amnesty or any sort of, amnesty of sorts. It was a farm worker program. It said it was in the 80s. And it was, I sort of started practicing around that time, and it was a mess. It was the way it was done was not well done. It was just overwhelming. The idea here is, obviously, there are two sides of the coin. There's the Republicans and the Democrats. And what President Obama has said is that obviously they're going through the fiscal cliff situation, and they're going through, obviously, sadly, with the gun control. Those two items are very, very big on the agenda. But the thought is that something is going to be proposed in early March, they say. I don't hold your breath for that. And they say that sometimes maybe that it would be voted on and maybe discussed and etc. back in maybe in August of this year. So there is hope that comprehensive immigration reform will go through. Both sides have agreed that it's needed. Both sides are working together, and there's a group that includes, actually it's a pretty interesting group of folks. There's Senator Schumer, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, Jeff Flake, Mike Lee, and Mark Rubio of Florida. They're working together. They've met already a couple times, and they're working towards really working on this particular very, very tough nut to crack. I'm optimistic. I think it's something that we really need. One of the things that's really very exciting to us as corporate immigration practitioners is the increase in visa numbers for skilled workers. So that is something that we're very, very excited about. And obviously we need to see when the dust settles and when eventually whatever the bill is going to look like. And one last little thing is that the Democrats wanted just make one sweeping bill, put everything together. Meanwhile, the Republicans are looking to sort of attack each particular thing piecemeal and make different laws and or different bills, I should say. So that's sort of where there's a little bit of a disconnect, but both parties are unified in the sense that something needs to be done. So, all right.